Hi, my name is K.Thomas, W1DED. It's Monday night. I'm here with the contest crew again. This week I have Chris Hurlbut, KL9A, and Randy Thompson, K5ZD. There's been a lot of conversation lately about contesting and the number of hours in a contest and the intensity. So we thought we'd talk about state QSO parties because it seems to be an easy way to enter the contest field and pick your hours based upon different rules at different states. Randy, why don't you kick it off?
Okay, well, I got started doing a lot of QSO parties early on. It was always a great way to get engaged when you don't have a big station. And QSO parties really come down, there's kind of two sides to the coin. You're either in the state that's running the QSO party, in which case you're the hunted, or you're outside the state and looking for people, and you're the hunter. And they're pretty different psychologies or strategies depending on which one you are, but we can get into that as we go along. But it's the great thing about QSO parties, they tend to be a little less frantic. They don't usually consume as much of the band, so it's easier to find a frequency and so on. And here recently, with the year-long QSO party challenges that are going on, there seems to be a dedicated group of people who just move from weekend to weekend, either being hunters or hunted. So there's a lot of activity these days.
And there seems to be a pretty wide range of how these state QSO parties are handled. I know I've talked to the Florida QSO Party recently, the club president. I've interviewed Dean Wood from California in the past, recently talked to K1KI about the New England QSO Party. Those three seem to be very well organized. But is that right? There's a pretty big range in how they're managed and therefore how much activity there is?
Well, I don't think management is tied to activity, although they do tend to correlate. It's really a case of every QSO party is kind of catering to a different situation. So, for example, the California QSO Party, you have a very large number of in-California stations. And the counties are very large and there are not very many. So you don't see as much mobile activity, but you see a lot of guys from their home stations or multi-ops that'll go portable to some mountaintop somewhere in a rare canyon and work lots of guys, which is great. The Florida QSO Party, on the other hand, not as many big stations, I'll say, but because there's a lot of counties and they're fairly small and close together and there's a good freeway and road system, there's a lot of mobile activity. So it's really fun for the hunters because there are probably a dozen stations that are changing counties every 20 minutes or so. And so part of the challenge is just chasing them all down and keeping track of them. A completely different feel for QSO parties, the Pennsylvania QSO Party. I lived in Pennsylvania for a while. It's a contest that has this long history and tradition of local participation. It's a contest that all the guys in Pennsylvania get on, and not the contest types, but just regular Joe Ham. And the way the rules are set up, the in-state stations get a multiplier for working counties as well as for working sections in the rest of the country. And so as a result, the activity tends to slew to the low band. So a lot of 40-meter activity, a lot of 80-meter and 75-meter activity. But because there's so many local guys on, it's generates this real feeling of excitement and buzz for the stations that are in the county. But anyway, each one of these things has a different personality, and it kind of somewhat depends on history and somewhat depends on the organizer and how much the promotion they do. And then sometimes it's just kind of how the rules are set up in the weekend that's chosen. It's difficult sometimes if the calendar has a lot of other competing events. Sometimes it's difficult to get started. And since KZRMD is not here, I'll have to mention the Minnesota QSO Party. It's a one-day event, and it's done in the winter, so only people from Minnesota would enjoy a one-day traveling around doing mobile in January or whenever. But it's, again, they've got a group of locals or a group of people in state who really push the contest, and activity creates activity. So the more people you can get on, the more activity there'll be.
And Randy, since you live in Massachusetts, talk to us about the New England QSO Party. I know during one of the last contest crew conversations, you had specifically said you had some ideas on how that might evolve in the future. And I'm just kind of curious. Well, first of all, tell us how that operates and what makes it different, and maybe where you think it should evolve to in the future.
New England QSO Party is an interesting one. It's the first weekend in May, I think. It covers all the New England states. So it's not really a state QSO party. It's a whole call area QSO party. The multiplier for people outside of New England, outside of W1, is counties. So our exchange is state and county. And it's a real challenge to work all the counties, because where Vermont has a lot of small counties, you can't easily drive from one to the next one. You pretty much go up and down the river valleys or the freeways. And then Maine has some larger counties that you kind of have to make a commitment to get to. But people do work them all. But one of the things about New England QSO parties, it starts kind of late in the afternoon, because it was on a weekend that used to have a ham fest then. So it started later so people could get back from the ham fest. It ends Saturday evening, not too late, takes almost a 12-hour, 10-hour break, and then starts again at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning and goes until the afternoon. So you get some time off. And a lot of QSO parties do this, put a break in the middle so people aren't forced to do the whole thing. The more activity, or the more the contest emphasizes mobiles, the more likely they are to put an off time in the middle, so that the mobiles can find a place to spend the night and then get back at it the next morning. Funny thing for me is I'll often be operating along and we get to the end of the contest like, no, I'm not ready to end right now. I want to keep going for a little while longer. But to go back to the thing about weekends, the New England QSO Party, that first weekend of May, it also shares the weekend with the Seven Land QSO Party. The Seven Land QSO Party starts earlier in the morning. And so a lot of times people have kind of gotten into the Seven Land contest and they're working guys in that. And then the New England one starts up a little bit later. And so one of the challenges when there's multiple QSO parties on in a weekend is figuring out your logging software and how you're going to handle it. And the New England QSO Party, the Seven Land QSO Party overlap, and then the Indiana QSO Party also overlaps for some period of time. And the three organizers have all kind of worked together to say, send us your log with everything, and we'll sort it out when we do the scoring for our particular contest. And the challenge there was that the New England contest always had this, they gave the exchange backwards from the other two. So it was always it was always county first and then state, where Seven Land was always, I think, state and then county. So that made it a little confusing. So this year, the New England QSO Party is flipping it over. So everyone will be in the same thing, kind of state and then county name. Anyway, more than you wanted to know. The other thing that was going on in that weekend was the ARI contest, which is the DX contest sponsored by Italy. And so the New England QSO Party had a rule that you could work countries for multipliers. So your multiplier was states and then countries. So a lot of times you would spend time working people who are in the ARI contest to get some of these countries out of Europe and wherever. And so you would have to give them both exchanges, which sometimes can be confusing. ARI contest uses serial numbers. So it's another thing to throw into the mix. But you see this all the time. Last weekend in the Ontario QSO Party, it overlapped with the CQMM DX contest. I worked a lot of stations in Ontario who called me and very crisply gave me signal report and their whatever they call them in their county, and then gave me the info I needed for my contest, and then I reciprocated by giving them my exchange for my contest and then giving them MA for Massachusetts so they could have a valid QSO. So you start to get the feel like these are not major events that take over the bands. They're coexisting, and over time, the participants of each QSO party learn how to either leverage the benefits of the other ones or avoid them, whichever they prefer.
So, Randy, you didn't really answer the question about how you handle the logging issue if the states aren't all getting along together. You had given the example of Indiana and New England all looking at the same log, but what if they're not? How do you handle that?
A couple of choices, depends on your logger. So you either have the choice of exiting or opening the new log for opening the log for the different contest, or you just find a way to hit Control Enter so it'll accept the exchange whether it matches or not. In the end, you got to get the stuff into the log. You can always sort out the paperwork later on. I think N1, I'm not an N1MM user, but I think N1MM has some tools to actually make it a little bit easier to switch between the different contests in the same weekend. So it's just, that is probably the one challenge of having multiple QSO parties going on at the same time. You either say, well, I'm in this one, and you kind of stick with that, or you say, I'm in all of them, and you deal with the issues of how to get it logged.
And Chris, what about you? 7QP?
Well, this is a great Randy episode. He's killing all the points. So I am no expert. I've done the 7QP exactly one time, and that was last year, and it's really cool. So Randy said activity breeds activity, and having the 7QP and the NEQP and the Indiana QSO Party, I think there's another one, maybe Delaware, on the same weekend is awesome. As a I don't know, participant, the bands come alive and everyone's mobile and everyone's looking for counties and everyone's kind of looking for the same thing and they're jumping around the bands. It's really cool. And the difference between the NEQP is the counties are about this big, and out here in 7-lane, they're bigger than the states over on the East Coast. So there's a lot of mobiles. They drive a lot of miles. And then there's a lot of guys that just go set up portable, kind of like the California QSO Party, and set up in the counties. I'm pretty sure not all of the 7-lane counties have been active at one time, but the website has a cool activation list, and they're pretty significant amount are active. And a lot of them, you're the only ham in the whole, a lot of them, you're like one of like 50 people in the whole county. So there's that. But it's really cool to get on the bands and work everyone it's just like an activity weekend. Everyone's mobile and everyone's on counties and they're just on and they're having fun. And 7QP is cool because it's just on Saturday. So I think it's like 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. here or something like that. It's great. I did it last year with a spider beam at 30 feet and I had 2,100 Qs. It was just a lot of fun. A lot of guys are on. So QSO parties are cool because they're low stress. And if you're just an average guy, you can get on and you'll have a pile up. If you got a ham stick in your car, even better.
One of the great things about QSO parties is when you're in the state that's running it, or you're in the target area, you get on and start calling CQ, and you work a lot of people who are in the contest or who are kind of trying to chase things for fun. It seems like hams love to collect things. So on a QSO party weekend, they love to collect counties. But that activity will get, then there will always be other people listening on the frequency. And when things kind of die down, you change your rhythm a little bit, maybe get a little more chatty, maybe a little more inviting, like, hey, you know, any station, anywhere kind of thing. And another group of guys will call in. And what's always amazing to me is, you know, they're not in the contest. You can tell they don't live and breathe contesting, but they know how to give you a report. They know how to give you their state or whatever that you ask for. Or they'll ask you, what do you need? And they're in the log and you move on to the next one. So there just seems to be an infinite number of people on 20-meter sideband if you're willing to sit there and grind them out.
So I did promise you guys that we would wrap up pretty quickly today. Is there any final comments about state or regional QSO parties?
I have a couple.
Surprise, surprise.
Shocker.
Well, I think
I never want to cut off Randy Thompson.
No. Well, maybe you should. But if you're in a state QSO party and you're in the target state, you want to work as many people as you can, and you want to work multipliers. So you kind of have to pay, you need to read the rules, know what the points are, where they come from. Some contests have double points on CW. Some contests will allow FT8 QSOs, some won't. So you need to kind of think about, well, what are the multipliers and where do I need to be to get them? A lot of times if you run enough, they'll mostly call you, but sometimes you're going to have to go find them or at least be in the right band at the right time. The other thing is a lot of people who are chasing you are not sitting there the entire weekend. QSO parties tend to be very much a come, tune around the band, work the guys that you find, then go off and do something else. Especially as we approach the spring here, a lot more, you got to go mow the yard, then you come back, work some more guys. Go do something else, come back, work some more guys. So if you think about that, you want to maximize your QSOs. One way to do that is you want to change bands and modes as often as you can. So that when somebody comes through and they do their 15 or 20-minute sweep across the bands. Maybe they find you on two bands, 20 CW and 15 CW, or maybe they find you on CW and phone. And you really can only pick up those by kind of moving around a lot. That's not to say you can't make a lot of QSOs by just sitting on one frequency the entire weekend, but you'll tend to pick up more guys on it if you jump around a little bit more. So don't forget that. And the other thing, like any contest, every contest has a certain rhythm, certain places where people go. So the Florida QSO Party, for example, starts on Sunday morning. I want to say late, but really not. It's 8 or 9 a.m. And almost all the activities on 40 meters, which is great for all the guys that are down in the southeast or the Floridans that are working each other. Kind of leaves the people that are farther away a little bit out until finally the Floridians move up to 20 meters. So we kind of see this phenomena every time. Another thing the Florida QSO Party has is it gives multipliers per mode. So you get all your counties on CW, and then you try to get all your counties on phone. And in reverse, the Floridians are trying to work as many sections as they can on CW and then phone. Florida has a lot of mobiles. Well, mobiling in QSO parties, you're typically not loud. And so it becomes very hard to attract attention and really maintain a run on phone. So what you notice in these QSO parties, almost all of them, not just Florida, the mobiles all live on CW. And they have their little mini pileups every 20 minutes when they change county lines, and it's pretty wild and lots of fun. They work all the same guys over again, but they really struggle on phone. So in the Florida contest, the mobiles will sometimes have to move people from CW to phone or try to find a way to announce where they are. And we've talked about self-spotting in the past. You want to check the rules and see if it's allowed. A number of QSO parties are allowing self-spotting now, and part of the reason and justification for that is to make it easier for people to find the stations in the target area, but also to make it more fun for the guys in the target area because they can announce where they are. They don't have to wait for somebody to spot them to say, hey, we're on 15 phone now, or we're on 10 meter phone now, or something like that. So again, pay attention. This is something that's definitely changing right now. It's worth paying attention to. And then I haven't been involved in it, but there is a group of people that have organized a competition of competitions. So there's a state QSO party challenge that's running the entire year, and you get points for making QSOs in as many state QSO parties as you can. And so that's something that seems to be pretty popular in that it's collected a loyal following. You go from contest to contest. So anyway, otherwise it's still contesting. It's just a little less stress, a little more relaxed. If you want to win, you still have to kind of work. I mean, you have to work at it. Not going to happen by accident, but you can really have a blast by doing an hour or 2 hours at a time, then go do something else, then come back and operate a few more hours. So it's great for people who don't have big stations or just want to get on and enjoy it while it's enjoyable and then quit or stop and go do something else.
Well, you're reminding me when I operated the California QSO Party last year, I was trying to get a clean sweep from Maine. There were a few counties I didn't get on Saturday. I thought, no big deal, I'll just pick them up on Sunday. But I didn't really understand that it was all mobile. And they were there on Saturday. They weren't going back on Sunday. It was done. And I guess if I had referred to the website, I would have known that, but I didn't know it at the time.
A lot of the QSO parties now do have an activation page where they list the people who have committed to be on from a county, and especially the mobiles, where the mobiles are going, which some of them even go so far as to tell you, well, we're going to start here, or we're going to be in these counties on Saturday and these counties on Sunday, something like that. That's part of the fun. It's very frustrating to be down to only needing 2 or 3 counties and you just can't find them. And you're CQing into the target zone over and over again, and you can't find those guys, and then you discover afterwards, yeah, they were on yesterday.
Chris, anything to add?
Not really. I'm taking notes. I'm learning stuff. I think my expertise is certainly not QSO parties, but my one foray into that. I mean, I've done CQP quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a little bit, it's a bit of a grind if you want to be serious. I think it'd be cool to be at mobile sometime. But yeah, it's the 7QP, the NEQP, the Indiana QSO Party all at once. I think that's super cool. And the Florida QSO Party is cool, but I like everyone all at one time. It's great.
Gentlemen, I appreciate the time tonight. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you for joining me.